Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is rebellion. Rebellion. Now, here's the thing. If I ask you this question, if you pray, but with no intention to do what God has instructed you to do, what would you call it? Well, we would likely call it rebellion. We would call it disobedience. If we're doing things without faith, then what are we doing? I mean, if everything that is apart from faith is sin, anything apart from God is sin. So if we're not focusing on Him, then we are being rebels and we're being rebellious. So as we begin this week, we're still in Numbers, and if you're watching these daily, this is Monday. Beginning this week, looking at some rebellion, and it follows through. That's kind of the theme for the week, really, for both Moses and Aaron, and even as we're going to talk about Balaam at the end of the week. Now, here's the thing. Numbers chapter 20, we've been talking about prayers all year long, different prayers and conversations with God. Now, I know some of these we've gone into a little bit more detail than others, but like today, we see that in the beginning of Numbers chapter 20, I always encourage you to read it all, read the passage yourself, and even where we left off in chapter 17, I pray that you read up to this point as well. But here in Numbers chapter 20, we find that the people are again complaining against God. And hey, now we don't have any water. Moses and Aaron come, and that's where we're going to pick up in verse 6. Numbers chapter 20, verse 6 says, So Moses and Aaron went up from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, something we have seen quite a bit here already in the book of Numbers. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals. Now, you think about that. I don't know if you've ever been thirsty, but if you've been looking for a water fountain, looking even for a drink machine, for some source of fluid, right? You're looking for some water just anywhere. Well, here's the thing. They're in the middle of the wilderness in the desert. And I mean, you thinking about that there's no resources where they're at, and they're crying out again. Why in the world did you bring us out here? Moses, why did you bring it? God, why didn't you kill us when you killed all the rest of those people we just talked about last week? I mean, you killed 15,000 at a time. I don't know why I couldn't have been in that number. It's almost what they're saying. But here's part of the problem is that they're lacking faith and trust in God. Now, Moses and Aaron, if you follow the story along, they call the people ahead, call them together, and then when they're supposed to speak to the rock, instead, in anger and rebellious nature themselves, Moses strikes the rock twice with his staff. And so we find out that you read the rest of this story, and you find out that because of it, they lose out on the benefits of being able to lead the children into the promised land. And so we find that disobedience again shows up. And rebellion, now that the rebellion of the people. You read that even Moses calls them rebels because they're acting against God. But yet he didn't even realize that in his own heart, he was acting against God. And I wonder how many times we do the exact same thing. I mean, there's times where, if we're not careful, we'll be praying for others who, we seem to be thinking that we're more high and mighty than they are. That, well, they're more sinful than we are. Now, we should pray for brothers and sisters, absolutely, and we should pray for the lost. But we should never get to the moment where we think that in our prayer, we're better than they are. Now, our prayer has to be based on the grace and mercy that's been shown to us. The fact that I can come and say, God, thank you for not wiping me off the face of the planet. God, thank you for forgiving me of my sins. And God, forgive me of my shortcomings. And even though I know I have my shortcomings, Lord, will you please also teach such and such? Will you also show such and such how that they can live closer and cleaner closer to you, Lord, in all that they do. I mean, that's what we're to do by example, and that's what Moses and Aaron were supposed to be doing by example. But here we find that rebellion in their prayer. It's God says that because they lacked faith or they lacked trust in Him, as many times as God had already performed miracles for them, and yet in this moment they got caught up and they lacked faith and they lacked trust. But let us not do the same. Let us not lack faith and trust in our prayer lives. That every time we pray and ask God that, yes, we don't always know what the answer will be, but we can have faith that He's able to deliver and able to do all the things that we're praying for. Because if we're praying out without faith or without trust, then like Moses and Aaron, we're going to miss out on the blessings of God. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.